The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey, and my hands were shaking just enough to make the silverware clink too loud against the plates. I thought it was just Christmas nerves. I didn't see the phone pointed at me from the windowsill, recording a moment that would soon belong to strangers. If you've ever given your whole heart to family and later wondered where you disappeared in the process, stay with me. What happened that night changed how I see love, respect, and my own worth. I was standing at the dining room table, smoothing out my mother's old red Christmas tablecloth, the one with the tiny holly berries faded almost pink after 40 years of washing. I only brought it out once a year. The fabric was thin now, soft as tissue in some spots, and I had to be careful not to tug too hard near the corners where the stitching had come loose. The house smelled like sage, butter, and the sweet burn of pecan pie that had bubbled over a little in the oven. From the living room, I could hear my grandkids arguing over a board game, their voices rising and falling like a radio that couldn't quite hold a signal. It was loud, warm, alive. The kind of noise I used to pray my house would be full of when my husband Frank and I were first starting out. I reached for the stack of plates, my good china with the thin gold rim, and my fingers didn't quite cooperate. Arthritis, my doctor called it. I called it stubborn hands that didn't know how to quit. A fork slipped and clattered onto the hardwood floor. "Mom, you okay in there?" my son Mark called from the hallway. "I'm fine," I said, a little too quickly. "Just butterfingers." He stepped into the doorway anyway, tall and broad like his father, though his hair was already thinning at the temples. "You sure you don't want me to finish setting up?" I smiled at him. "It's Christmas. This is my department." He gave a half laugh, half sigh, like he'd learned a long time ago not to argue with me about holiday traditions. "Okay, General." Behind him, my daughter-in-law Emily appeared, her phone already in her hand like it was part of her body. She wore a cream sweater dress and those tall boots that looked nice, but always made me wonder how anyone's feet survived in them. "Linda, everything looks so cozy," she said, her voice bright and camera-ready, even when there was no camera in sight. "The lighting in here is actually perfect tonight." I didn't think much of that. Emily had started a family lifestyle channel online a year or so ago. Recipes, cleaning tips, little clips of the kids doing crafts. She called it Sharing Real Life. I tried to be supportive, even if I didn't quite understand why strangers needed to see your laundry room. "Well, it's the same lighting we've had since 1989, I said, patting the wall. "Guess we got lucky." She laughed, but her eyes flicked around the room, measuring things. I noticed it, the way she scanned spaces like she was already seeing them inside a screen. That's when I felt the first tiny pinch in my chest, the kind you get when you can't tell if you left the stove on or just imagined you did. But I pushed it aside. There was gravy to stir. I set Frank's old place at the head of the table out of habit, then paused. He'd been gone 6 years, but every Christmas I still put a plate there for a moment before moving it. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself that love doesn't leave just because a body does. I carried the plate back to the cabinet and heard Emily's voice behind me. "Linda, would you mind saying grace tonight, the way you always do?" "Of course," I said. "I always do." She stepped closer to the windowsill and adjusted something with her hand. I thought she was just moving the candle holder so it wouldn't drip wax on the paint. I didn't look closely. I wish I had. That's something I think about a lot now. How many big changes start with tiny things you don't bother to notice. Dinner came together in a rush of oven doors and serving spoons. Mark carved the turkey. The kids knocked over a glass of milk and then argued about who did it. Emily wiped the table with quick, efficient swipes, her phone never far from reach. When we finally sat down, the room glowed. The overhead light was off, and the soft yellow lamps made everyone look younger, kinder. I felt that familiar Christmas swell in my chest, the one that says, "You did it. You kept everyone together one more year." I bowed my head. "Lord, thank you for bringing us all to this table again," I began, my voice already thick. "Thank you for health, for second chances, and for the people we love, especially the ones who can't be here with us tonight." I thought of Frank, of his laugh, of the way he used to sneak bits of turkey skin before dinner. My throat tightened. Help us remember that family is a gift, even when it's hard, and that loving each other sometimes means giving more than we think we have. I paused, embarrassed by the tremble in my voice. I've been blessed to spend my whole life taking care of this family, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. When I opened my eyes, everyone said amen, but Emily was looking at her phone, not her plate. Later, as I stood at the sink rinsing dishes, she came in beside me. "Linda, that was really beautiful what you said," she told me softly, "about giving your whole life to your family. Would you mind saying that part again? I didn't quite catch it." I laughed, water running over my hands. "Oh, honey, I don't even remember exactly what I said. Just something like, you gave your whole life to taking care of them?" I shrugged. "Well, I did. That's what mothers do. That's what grandmothers do." She gave me a look I couldn't quite read. "Yeah," she said quietly. "That's what they do." Out in the hallway, I heard her whispering to Mark. I couldn't make out most of it over the sound of the faucet, but I caught one sentence clear as a bell. "This is going to get so much attention. It's so real it hurts." I turned off the water, my hands suddenly cold, and for the first time that night, I wondered what, exactly, she meant. I woke up before the sun the next morning, the way older bodies do when they've had too much excitement and too much salt. The house was quiet in that strange, hollow way it only gets after a holiday. Wrapping paper slumped in corners, serving dishes soaking in cloudy water, a faint smell of gravy still hanging in the air like a memory that hadn't decided to leave yet. I wrapped both hands around Frank's old ceramic mug, the one with the chipped handle I refused to throw away. The coffee tasted a little burnt, but I didn't mind. I stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the backyard dusted with a thin layer of Ohio frost, and tried to hold on to the warmth from the night before. That's when my phone started buzzing on the counter. I almost ignored it. Most mornings, it was just appointment reminders or a group text from church. But it kept going, buzz, pause, buzz, buzz, like someone tapping on my shoulder over and over. I picked it up. 6 missed calls, all from Carol. Carol has been my friend since 1994, when our boys played Little League together, and we spent entire Saturdays on aluminum bleachers with sunburned noses and thermoses of lemonade. She doesn't call 6 times in a row unless someone's in the hospital. I called her back right away. "Carol, what's wrong?" Her voice came in low and tight. "Linda, honey, did you mean for that video to be public?" I frowned. "What video?" There was a pause on the line, the kind where you can feel someone wishing they didn't have to be the one to say something. "The Christmas one," she said gently. "Of you, praying." My stomach dropped so fast, it felt like I'd missed a step in the dark. I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm sending you the link," she said. "Just sit down first." The message came through before we even hung up. My hands were already shaking when I tapped it. There I was, my own kitchen, my own table, my red Christmas tablecloth, bright on the screen like it belonged to someone else. The video had soft piano music playing under it, the kind they use in sad commercials. The title across the top read, "My mother-in-law gave up her whole life for us, and we never noticed." I stopped breathing for a second. The first clip was me bowing my head, my voice thick as I prayed. Then it cut to a close-up of my hands at the sink, water running over wrinkled skin. Then my voice again, the line Emily had asked me to repeat. I've been blessed to spend my whole life taking care of this family. Only she'd trimmed the rest. The part where I said I wouldn't trade it for anything was gone. Text appeared on the screen in white letters. She thinks this is just what grandmothers do. The video cut to me standing alone at the stove, back slightly bent, stirring gravy. The lighting made me look smaller than I felt. My chest tightened so hard I had to sit down at the kitchen table. The comments were flying by faster than I could read them. This breaks my heart. Her son should be ashamed. Why do we treat our elders like live-in help? She looks so tired. Someone get this woman her own life. I pressed a hand to my mouth. That's when I realized something that made my skin prickle. Strangers were talking about me like I was a character in a story, not a person. Not Linda, who hates mushrooms and still folds socks the way her mother taught her. Just a sad grandma in a video. I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly turned the phone face down, like I'd been caught doing something wrong. Mark walked in, hair messy, still in the sweatpants he'd slept in. Morning, Mom. You see the video yet? I looked up at him slowly. You knew? He rubbed the back of his neck. Emily posted it late last night. It's kind of blowing up. Blowing up? I repeated. Mark, that was my prayer. That was private. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me. It's not private, Mom. It's just real. People relate to it. I didn't agree to be filmed, I said quietly. He sighed, like I was the one making this complicated. She films all the time, you know that. Not like that, I said. Not my words, not my face when I'm crying about your father at Christmas dinner. Before he could answer, Emily breezed in, already dressed, makeup done. Good morning! Have you checked the views? We passed 100,000 overnight. She stopped when she saw my face. Oh, you saw it. Emily, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Why didn't you ask me? She blinked. Ask you what? To put my life on the internet. She set her phone down on the counter. Linda, it's not your life. It's our family's story. And it's helping people. The comments are full of women saying they feel seen. I don't feel seen, I said. I feel exposed. She crossed her arms. It's not like we lied. You said those things. I said them to my family, I replied, not to the world. Mark looked between us like he was watching a tennis match he didn't want to referee. Mom, it's not a big deal. It's just social media. Just social media. I thought about the way the camera had zoomed in on my hands, on my back, the music, the words they'd left out, the story they'd shaped. On the table beside me, the red tablecloth was still there, a faint cranberry stain near the edge. I ran my fingers over it, over the fabric my mother had once ironed in her own kitchen. Strangers had seen that cloth before my own sister had, before half my church friends ever had. Strangers had opinions about my life now, about whether I was appreciated, whether I was trapped. One comment near the top caught my eye. I bet she has no money of her own. She's probably stuck. That one hit too close. Years ago, when Mark and Emily wanted to renovate the kitchen and build equity, I'd given them money from refinancing this house, $20,000. I told myself it was an investment in family, in shared space, in the future. I'd never thought of it as something that could leave me dependent. People are being really supportive, Emily went on. Brands are even reaching out. This could help us so much. Help us. I looked at my son. And what about me? He hesitated just long enough to hurt. "It's not hurting you, Mom." Right then, another notification popped up on Emily's phone. She turned the screen toward us, eyes shining. A local news page had shared the video with the caption, "Are we failing the grandmothers who hold our families together?" My face was right there under the headline. I stared at it, my own kitchen behind me. My own words turned into something I didn't recognize, and for the first time in that house, at that table, surrounded by the people I loved most, I felt like I was the only one who understood that something had just been taken from me, and it wasn't small. For the next few days, I moved through the house like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. I still made breakfast for the kids. I still folded laundry warm from the dryer. I still wiped down the counters every night before bed. But something inside me had shifted, like a picture frame knocked crooked that no one else seemed to notice. Everywhere I went, I had the strange feeling of being watched, even when no one was around. I avoided the grocery store that week. I told Mark we had plenty of food. The truth was, I was afraid someone would recognize me from the video, afraid they'd look at me with pity, or worse, curiosity. On Thursday afternoon, there was a soft knock at the front door. I opened it to find Mrs. Alvarez from next door, holding a foil-covered plate. "I made too many empanadas," she said with a knowing look. Again. Mrs. Alvarez was 72, sharp as a tack, and the only person on this street who still hung laundry outside when the weather allowed. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited, the way real neighbors do. "You look tired, Linda," she said, setting the plate on the counter. I tried to smile. "Just the holiday catching up with me." She studied my face for a long moment. "Or maybe the internet." My shoulders sagged. "You saw it." "Half the church saw it," she said gently, "and everyone who saw it had the same question. Did you want that out there?" I sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly too tired to stand. "No," I whispered. I didn't even know she was recording. Mrs. Alvarez pulled out the chair across from me. "That's not right." I nodded, tears slipping down before I could stop them. "They say it's helping people, that it's telling an important story." She reached across and squeezed my hand. "Honey, your story belongs to you first." That sentence sat between us, heavy and true. "I don't want to fight with them," I said. I don't want to feel like I'm public property in my own home." Mrs. Alvarez leaned back. "Then maybe it's time you talk to someone who can tell you what your rights are, just to understand your options." I gave a tired laugh. "Options? At my age?" "At our age," she corrected. "We finally start using them." That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat at the small desk in my room with my laptop open. I stared at the video again, at my own face frozen mid-prayer. The views had climbed past 500,000. 500,000 strangers had seen a moment I didn't know I'd shared. That's when a quiet, stubborn voice inside me said, "This can't be the only way this story ends." The next morning, I told Mark I had a doctor's appointment and took the bus downtown instead. The law office was on the third floor of an old brick building that smelled like paper and coffee. The plaque by the door read, "David Klein, Attorney at Law." I almost turned around twice before going in. David was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes and sleeves rolled up like he actually worked for a living. He listened without interrupting as I told him about Christmas dinner, the video, the comments. "I never agreed to be filmed," I said, "and I certainly didn't agree for it to make money." He nodded slowly. "Do you know if the channel is monetized?" "I don't even know what that means," I admitted. "It means they earn ad revenue," he explained. "Potentially brand deals, too. If your image and words are being used for profit without your consent, that changes things. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in days. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. So I'm not crazy for feeling this way? Not at all, he said. You have what's called a right of publicity and privacy concerns, especially since this wasn't filmed in a truly public setting. It was your home. My home. Hearing him say it out loud made my throat tighten. I don't want to sue my family, I said quickly. I just want it taken down, and I want them to understand this isn't okay. That's reasonable, he said. We can start with a formal takedown request and a cease and desist letter. It doesn't have to escalate unless they refuse. Refuse. The word made my stomach twist. I still thought of Mark as the little boy who used to crawl into my bed after thunderstorms. On the bus ride home, I stared out the window at rows of storefronts, people hurrying with coffee cups and briefcases. Everyone looked like they were headed somewhere important. I wondered when I'd stopped believing I was allowed to be important too. That night, after the house went quiet again, I opened my old metal filing cabinet. The drawers squealed the way they always had. Inside were decades of my life in manila folders, insurance papers, Frank's pension forms, warranty manuals for appliances we didn't even own anymore. Near the back, I found a folder labeled Refi 2016. I pulled it out, heart thudding. There was the copy of the check I'd written Mark and Emily for $20,000. And behind it, a single sheet of paper in Mark's handwriting. Loan from Mom. Will repay when we can. Love you. Loan. I sat back on the floor, folder in my lap. I had forgotten that word. Somewhere along the way, I'd rewritten the story in my own head, told myself it was just what mothers do. Give. Don't keep score. But this wasn't about score anymore. It was about value. Upstairs, I heard Emily's voice drifting through the vents, rehearsing in a soft, emotional tone. So many grandmothers sacrifice their identities. I closed the folder slowly. They were telling a story about me, but they had never asked what my version was. The next morning, while Mark was at work and Emily was driving the kids to school, I called David Klein and told him to send the letter. I didn't tell anyone in the house, and as I hung up the phone, my hands trembled, but not from weakness, from the feeling that, for the first time in a long time, I had done something just for me. The video disappeared 3 days later. I knew the exact moment it happened because Emily's voice carried through the house like a fire alarm. "What do you mean it's been removed?" she shouted from the living room. "There's no warning, no strike, just gone." I was at the kitchen table, folding dish towels, the red Christmas tablecloth resting in a neat square beside me. I kept my hands moving, though my heart had started pounding. Mark came in from the hallway, phone in his hand. "It says it violated privacy policies," he said, confusion and frustration tangled in his voice. "Did someone report it?" Emily's eyes swung toward me. I didn't look away. "You?" she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You did this?" I folded the last towel and set it down. "I asked for it to be taken down, yes." Her mouth fell open. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I asked for my private moment back." She let out a short, angry laugh. "That video was helping people. It was growing the channel. We had brands reaching out, Linda. Real money." There it was. Not awareness, not healing. Money. Mark rubbed his temples. "Mom, you could have talked to us first." "I tried," I said. "You told me it wasn't a big deal." Emily started pacing. "Do you know how much that video was making per day?" "No," I said, "but I know how much it cost me." She stopped walking. This is so unfair. Families share things. That's normal now. I looked at her steadily. Families also ask before they share. The kitchen felt smaller than usual, the air thick with something that had been building for years without me naming it. Mark pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. "We weren't trying to hurt you, Mom." "I believe that," I said, "but you still did." Silence stretched between us. I picked up the red tablecloth and smoothed my hand over it. "I found something the other night," I said. They both looked at me. "In my old refinance papers, the check I gave you, the $20,000. Mark's face changed, just slightly. "There was a note," I went on, "in your handwriting. It said, 'loan.'" Emily crossed her arms. "Are we really doing this right now?" "Yes," I said, surprising even myself with how steady my voice was. "We are." Mark swallowed. "Mom, we always meant to pay you back. Things just got tight." I nodded. "I understand tight. I lived on canned soup for a year after your father got laid off in '92. Tight isn't new to me." Emily threw up her hands. "We have a mortgage, car payments, preschool." "And I have Social Security and a small survivor's pension," I said gently. "And I've been helping with your utilities for 6 years. That quieted the room. I looked at my son. I never minded helping when it was about getting through, but now I see it's also been about keeping up. Mark looked down at the table. Emily's voice softened, but there was still an edge to it. "So what? You're just punishing us?" "No," I said. "I'm asking for something different." I took a breath. "I don't want interest. I don't want to drag this through court. I want a simple repayment plan, something small each month, and I want clear boundaries." "Boundaries," Emily repeated like it was a foreign word. "Yes," I said. "No filming me, no posting about me, no turning my life into a lesson for strangers without my permission." Mark nodded slowly. "That's fair." Emily stared at him. "You're just agreeing?" He looked tired, older than his 42 years. "She's right." I hadn't expected how much that would mean. If you've ever stood in your own kitchen and realized you've been shrinking to keep the peace, you know how hard it is to finally speak up. I still wonder what I would have done if I'd kept staying quiet. Emily turned away, blinking fast. "We were finally getting ahead," she muttered. "The channel was taking off." "At whose expense?" I asked softly. No one answered. Later that afternoon, Mark came to my room and knocked on the doorframe. "Can I come in?" "Of course." He sat on the edge of my bed, the same way he used to when he was a teenager and needed help with homework or heartbreak. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said. "I really am. I didn't think about how it felt for you. I just saw numbers going up and thought, maybe this is our break." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "I know you weren't trying to be cruel, but good intentions don't erase hurt." He nodded, eyes shiny. "We'll make a plan, I promise." That evening, while Emily took the kids to a birthday party, Mrs. Alvarez came over with a stack of brochures. "Senior apartments," she said, spreading them out on the kitchen table. "Just to look." I stared at the pictures. Small, bright kitchens, community gardens, walking paths. "I don't know," I said. "This has been my home a long time." She gave me a gentle look. "Is it still your home, or just the place you work?" That question stayed with me all night. After everyone went to bed, I pulled a cardboard box from the closet and began packing a few things. Not everything, just mine. My photo albums, Frank's old watch, and the red Christmas tablecloth folded carefully on top. For the first time, I wasn't packing away memories. I was packing up pieces of myself. The next morning at breakfast, Mark looked at the box by the hallway. "Mom, what's that?" I met his eyes. "I think it's time I find a place that's mine again." He opened his mouth to protest. I shook my head gently. "This isn't me leaving you. It's me coming back to myself." And as the words settled in the air between us, I knew there was no going back to the way things had been. Moving day came in early March, when the snow had melted into gray slush along the curbs and the air smelled like wet earth trying to wake up. I didn't have much to take. A dresser, 2 lamps, boxes of clothes, and the small wooden chest Frank built in our garage the summer before he got sick. Mark loaded everything into the back of a rented van while the kids stood on the porch, quiet in a way children usually aren't. Emily stayed inside. I walked through the house one last time, my hand trailing along the hallway wall where pencil marks still showed how tall the kids had been at different ages. I wasn't angry anymore, just aware of how much of myself I'd poured into those rooms and how easy it had been for that to become invisible. In the kitchen, I opened the drawer and took out the red Christmas tablecloth. I pressed it to my chest for a moment, breathing in the faint scent of detergent and old memories. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in my purse. The senior apartment complex was only 15 minutes away, near the public library and a little park with a duck pond. My new place was small, but the windows were wide and let in honest light. The rent was based on income, something I hadn't known I qualified for until Mrs. Alvarez helped me fill out the paperwork. "I can't believe you've been paying market rent here all these years," she'd said, shaking her head. "You could have saved so much." I had smiled. I didn't know I was allowed to want less stress. Mark carried in the last box and set it down by the couch. He looked around the apartment, taking in the plain beige walls and the tiny kitchen with its 2-burner stove. "It's nice," he said. "It's peaceful," I corrected gently. He nodded. Emily wanted to come. She just didn't know what to say. "I understand," I said. And I did. Growth is uncomfortable to watch when you're not ready to do it yourself. Before he left, Mark handed me an envelope. "First payment," he said quietly. "We set up automatic transfers like we talked about." I opened it after he drove away. Inside was a check for $300 and a handwritten note. "I'm sorry I forgot you're a person before you're a mom. I'm trying to do better. Love, Mark." I sat down on my new couch and cried, not from sadness, but from the strange relief of finally being seen clearly. The weeks that followed were quieter than any I'd had in years. I joined a quilting group at the community center and made friends with a retired librarian named Joyce who brought lemon bars to every meeting. I started taking the bus to the farmer's market on Saturdays, buying just enough for one. Emily didn't call at first. Then one afternoon, about a month later, my phone buzzed with a message. "I've been thinking a lot. I'm sorry I didn't understand how it felt for you. I'm trying to learn." It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Mark brought the kids over on Sundays. No cameras, no staged moments. Just board games on the coffee table and crumbs from store-bought cookies. One afternoon, my granddaughter Lily crawled into my lap and said, "Grandma, I like your new house. It feels like you." That might have been the highest compliment I'd ever received. The following December, I hosted Christmas dinner in my little apartment. The table barely fit 4 chairs, so the kids sat on cushions on the floor, giggling. Mark carved a small turkey breast instead of a whole bird. Before we ate, everyone looked at me. "Grandma, will you say grace?" Lily asked. I unfolded the red Christmas tablecloth and spread it over the table. The fabric was thin, worn, but still bright in places. still strong. I bowed my head. "Thank you," I said softly, "for homes that fit the lives we're living now, for second chances, and for the courage to love each other with respect." My voice didn't shake this time. When I looked up, Mark was smiling at me in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not distracted, not rushed, just present. Loving them had never been the mistake. Forgetting to love myself had been. And the lesson I carried into that small, warm room was simple. Quiet strength isn't about enduring everything. Sometimes it's about knowing when to step back so everyone can finally see you standing there. If this story touched you, I hope you'll subscribe, like, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that boundaries can be loving too. And I'd truly love to hear your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Your story matters more than you know,